In this video, I'm going to review a financial plan for a client that should be able to save over $450,000 by executing systematic Roth conversions early in life after retiring at the age of 58. And make sure you stick around till the end because we're going to look at a scenario to see how much less they might be able to save by waiting 7 years to start those Roth conversions. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Zach Morris, and I'm the founder of Paces Ferry Wealth Advisors. And let's go ahead and jump into this analysis. Michael and Sarah are 58 and 57 respectively, and they have over $4 million in assets. Michael has about 1.5 million in his IRA, and of course, all of these names and numbers have been slightly changed for confidentiality and presentation purposes. And they have 2.5 million in a joint account. Now, that's important because when you look at Roth conversion scenarios and analysis, sometimes it doesn't work if all of somebody's money is in an IRA. And the reason why is because the strategy can sort of cannibalize itself because they're paying the taxes for the conversion out of the IRA. But in this case, they have a lot of after-tax money in a joint account, which they can use to pay the taxes. So Sarah also has a small IRA at $25,000. Now, Michael and Sarah have some modest spending goals. So for somebody with $4 million, they want to have basic living expenses of about $95,000 a year. And then, of course, we're going to add healthcare to that. So a lot of times when somebody retires before the age of 65, healthcare can be a major expense and really hurt their ability to retire. Because Michael and Sarah were able to keep their other expenses down to $95,000, the healthcare expense is something that they're able to absorb. So the healthcare expense that we're estimating for 2025 to 2030 is a little over $29,000. Then when Michael's on Medicare, it drops a little bit, and then it drops again when they both get on Medicare. So Medicare is really going to lower their overall expenses. Sometimes people can't retire until 65 because of that reason. In this case, they are able to retire at 58 and 57 respectively. So the other thing that is very important to them is travel. So Michael and Sarah like to go on a couple trips a year. Sometimes it's one big trip to Europe, and they'll use that whole $25,000 on that trip. And the other years, it's just $12,000 ski trips, or sometimes they like to go to the beach. So now let's look at Michael and Sarah's sources of income in retirement. So because they don't have any pensions, their main sources of income and regular income is really going to be Social Security and income from their investment portfolio. So Michael and Sarah are both eligible for Social Security. Michael's going to bring in about $44,000 a year when he reaches the age of 67. Sarah is going to bring in about $22,000 a year when she reaches the age of 67. Now, when you're looking at Roth conversion scenarios, it's important to take into account both Social Security as well as your required minimum distributions. Because when you start systematic Roth conversions early, what you're really doing is you're able to bring those Roth conversions up to a certain tax bracket. And really, you're going to have a lot more control before Social Security kicks in and before the required minimum distributions kick in. The reason why Roth conversions can be so helpful in a situation like this is that sometimes, especially when you have modest spending goals in retirement, sometimes your required minimum distributions plus your Social Security might generate more income than you even need to live in retirement. So let's look at the example of Michael and Sarah, and you can use this as a way to apply it to maybe your own situation and see if Roth conversions might be appropriate for you. So in the example of Michael and Sarah, in the year 2041, when they start taking required minimum distributions, their RMDs are projected to be about $141,000 a year. So you add that to their Social Security and $96,000 a year. And those two things combined are close to putting them over the amount of money that they even need to live. You add any types of taxes generated or income generated from the investment portfolio, and it's putting them in a tax bracket that they don't need to be in based on their overall spending goals. So how can we take steps today to mitigate the future taxes that they might have to pay? So once RMDs kick in, they're projected to be mostly in the 25% tax bracket, and a lot of their income is going to fall within that bracket. Now, 25% tax bracket is different than it is today because when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act potentially expires at the end of 2025, the tax brackets are going to revert back to pre-Tax Cuts and Jobs Act tax brackets. So right now, this bracket is actually a 22% tax bracket, and then it'll increase at the end of 2025 unless the law is changed or made permanent to a 25% tax bracket. Now, what can they do to pay the taxes today in order to mitigate having most of their retirement in this higher tax bracket? So if they were to execute Roth conversions today, they would do systematic Roth conversions each year leading up to the time that they start taking required minimum distributions, and then they would stop. So if they were to do that, their required minimum distribution in 2041 is projected to go from 141,000 down to 39,000. So the way this saves them taxes, and here's your number right here, $458,000 in tax savings by executing this strategy early on rather than waiting or doing it none at all. Now, why is there such a big tax savings? If we look at where the total income is and what tax bracket they're in with this strategy, you can see that they're not being bumped into a higher tax bracket. They're paying the taxes today so that potentially they don't have to pay it later. Now, if we switch over to this tax view, you can see that the taxes are much higher today. And then this green bars are all the tax decreases in the future. So with the portfolio value potentially at a lower amount today, and hopefully it's going to grow over time, right? There's no promises, but hopefully the portfolio value grows over time. And so by doing Roth conversions today and projecting out, you give them the potential tax savings of not having to pay taxes on required minimum distributions in the future, and potentially on an amount that they don't need to live, right? So let me switch off this strategy real quick and you can see what the taxes are without the strategy. And then when I click it back on, you can see the difference. So why does this strategy work so well? One, they have the money to pay the taxes in an after-tax account. Two, they're retiring early and they have modest spending goals. So they're not having to pull money out of their investment portfolio or generate other types of taxable gains. So they can really utilize the maximum amount of Roth conversions up to the 22% tax bracket. So that's how we're looking at this. We looked at it a number of different ways. We went up to the 32% tax bracket. We said, what if we just stay at the 12% tax bracket? But the maximum Roth conversion analysis or scenario was done at the 22% tax bracket. Now, how would this scenario work differently if Michael were to wait? So right now he's retiring at 58. He's starting the Roth conversions immediately at 58. But what if he were to wait until 65? So if he were to wait until 65, the total estimated tax savings drops from 450,000 roughly to 284,000. So we're sticking with the same 22% tax bracket. So we're staying within that tax bracket. Of course, after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act goes away, that jumps to a 25% tax bracket. But by staying in that tax bracket and not going into the next one, we're still able to make a lot of conversions before 2041. However, the tax savings are a lot less. So the estimated tax savings drops to 284,000. I hope this video was helpful and you were able to find some similarities to your own situation. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe and be on the lookout for more videos from this channel. Thank you.